The recorded history of the Middle East begins in ancient Mesopotamia, where human societies first transitioned from a nomadic lifestyle to permanent settlements based on agriculture. By the late 4th millennium BC, the Sumerians in southern Mesopotamia had developed the world's oldest known urban and literate civilization. This early society pioneered many foundational technologies and institutions. They built the first cities, invented cuneiform writing, and established complex bureaucracies as well as legal codes. Nearby, ancient Egypt also emerged as a unified civilization around 3150 BC. Together, these societies marked out the Fertile Crescent stretching from Mesopotamia through the Levant to the Nile as home to multiple advanced cultures and what would later be called the cradle of civilization. Over the ensuing centuries, numerous empires rose and fell across the ancient Middle East. The Sumerian city-states were succeeded by the Achaemenid Empire around 2400 BC, which in turn gave way to subsequent Mesopotamian powers such as Babylonia and Assyria. These empires endured for over 1500 years and dominated the region through military might, administrative innovation, and cultural sophistication. Meanwhile, in the Levanten corridor, the Phoenicians established several maritime city-states that traded extensively across the Mediterranean and developed an early alphabet, one that would become the foundation of the Greek and Latin scripts and ultimately the modern alphabet used in much of the world today. Farther to the east, during the 6th century BC, the Achaemenid Empire, founded by Cyrus the Great, conquered Mesopotamia, Egypt, and much of West Asia. This was a pivotal moment. For the first time, the disparate regions of the Middle East were united under a single imperial system, laying the groundwork for an enduring imperial tradition in the region. It was during this period of classical antiquity that the Middle East encountered a new set of cultural and political influences from the West. In 334 BC, Alexander the Great of Macedon invaded and ultimately overthrew the vast Persian Achaemenid Empire, which stretched from modern-day Turkey to Afghanistan. Though Alexander died in 323 BC and his empire quickly fragmented, his conquests introduced Hellenistic culture across the Middle East. Successor states like the Seleucid Empire in Syria and Mesopotamia and the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt preserved and adapted Greek culture, language, and governance. Major urban centers, such as Alexandria and Antioch, became hubs of Greek learning and multicultural exchange. This fusion of Greek and local tradition helped create a cosmopolitan environment that bridged East and West, facilitating the transmission of ideas, arts, and sciences that would resonate for centuries. As the Hellenistic kingdoms waned, the Middle East fell increasingly under the influence of rising power. Rome. By the 1st century BC, the Roman Republic, soon to become the Roman Empire, had extended its reach into the eastern Mediterranean. Roman forces gradually annexed much of the region, including Asia Minor, the Levant, and Egypt, converting them into prosperous provinces of a vast imperial system. The Pax Romana, a period of relative peace and lasting roughly 2 centuries, brought economic integration, infrastructural development, and administrative cohesion. It was during this Roman era that one of the most consequential religious developments in world history occurred: the emergence of Christianity. Originating in Roman Judea during the 1st century AD as a reformist movement within Judaism, Christianity spread rapidly through the empire despite early persecution. By the early 4th century, the Emperor Constantine had embraced the faith and in 313 AD issued the Edict of Milan, granting religious tolerance throughout the empire. In 330 AD, he founded Constantinople as a new imperial capital, and by the end of the century, Christianity had become the official religion of the Roman Empire, replacing classical paganism and profoundly reshaping the cultural and spiritual landscape of the Middle East. The Transformation of the Roman world into a Christian empire marked a critical inflection point for both European and Middle Eastern history. Yet the Roman hold over the region was never absolute. From the 3rd to 7th centuries AD, the eastern provinces of the empire, now administered from Constantinople and known as the Byzantine Empire, were locked in nearly continuous conflict with a revitalized Persian state, the Sasanian Empire. These two superpowers, Byzantine and Sasanian, divided the Middle East between them, with the Byzantines holding Anatolia, the Levant, and Egypt, and the Sasanians ruling over Iran, Mesopotamia, and parts of the Arabian frontier. Their long-standing rivalry culminated in a devastating series of wars culminating in the Byzantine-Sasanian War of 602 to 628 AD, which left both empires militarily exhausted and politically destabilized. This mutual weakening created a historic opening for a new force that would profoundly reshape the region. In the early 7th century, a revolutionary religious and political movement emerged in the Arabian Peninsula, Islam. The Prophet Muhammad, born in Mecca around 570 AD, began preaching in 610 AD, delivering a message of strict monotheism and social justice that drew from and reinterpreted earlier Jewish and Christian traditions. Muhammad's success in uniting the Arab tribes under the banner of Islam was unprecedented. Following his death in 630 to AD, his successors, the caliphs, launched a series of astonishingly swift and successful conquests, filling the power vacuum left by the waning Byzantine and Within just 2 decades, Muslim forces had taken Syria and Palestine from Byzantine control, Egypt by the year 642, and had entirely dismantled the Sasanian state by 651. The Rashidun Caliphate thus emerged as a dominant imperial power, controlling Mesopotamia, Persia, the Levant, Egypt, and extending from North Africa to the borders of India. These conquests were not only military achievements, but also marked a civilizational turning point. Islam became both a unifying religious identity and the foundation of a new imperial order. Arabic was adopted as their administrative language, gradually supplanting the Greek, Aramaic, and Persian previously used. Over time, most of the region's population came to speak Arabic and adhere to Islam, though Christian, Jewish, and other religious minorities continued to live under Islamic rule, often protected but subject to legal and fiscal distinctions under the status of dhimmi. Following the rapid conquests, the Islamic world entered a period of political consolidation and cultural flowering. The Umayyad Caliphate, established in 661 with its capital in Damascus, presided over a vast empire stretching from Spain to the Indus River. The Umayyads built enduring monuments, such as the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, completed in 692, and expanded infrastructure and administration to maintain control over their diverse subjects. However, their rule was marked by tensions, particularly with non-Arab converts and supporters of the Shia branch of Islam, culminating in the Abbasid Revolution. In 750, the Abbasids overthrew the Umayyads and established a new dynasty with its capital in Baghdad. Under Abbasid rule, the Islamic world entered what is often referred to as its Golden Age. Baghdad became a global center of learning, trade, and culture. The House of Wisdom, founded in the early 9th century, became a hub for scholars who translated Greek philosophical and scientific texts into Arabic, preserving classical knowledge and greatly expanding it. Advances were made in mathematics, algebra, algorithms, medicine, astronomy, philosophy, and literature. Economically, the Abbasids benefited from their control over the Silk Road, facilitating connections between East and West. Culturally, their rule represented a synthesis of Arab, Persian, Hellenistic, and Indian influences, which fostered innovations ranging from the development of Arabic numerals to literary classics like 1001 Nights. By the 10th century, however, the unity of the Abbasid Caliphate had begun to fragment. The sheer scale of the empire made it increasingly difficult to govern effectively, and regional dynasties began asserting autonomy while still recognizing, at least nominally, the spiritual authority of the Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad. In Iran and Iraq, Persianate regimes like the Buyids came to dominate from the mid-10th century,
while Turkic warlords, such as the Seljuks, rose to power in the 11th century, claiming to protect the Abbasid caliphs as military patrons. Meanwhile, rival caliphates emerged, most notably the Fatimids of Egypt, who established a Shia regime during the early 10th century, directly challenging Abbasid supremacy and illustrating the growing sectarian divisions within Islam. This period of political fragmentation also exposed the Islamic world to new external pressures. In the late 11th century, feudal lords and knights from Western Europe launched a series of religiously motivated invasions known as the Crusades. These campaigns, which lasted until the end of the 13th century, led to the establishment of several short-lived crusader states in the Levant, particularly in Syria and Palestine. Despite initial successes by the Crusaders, Muslim resistance gradually intensified. The Ayyubid dynasty under Saladin recaptured Jerusalem in 1187, and ultimately the Mamluks of Egypt emerged as the dominant defenders of the Islamic world, defeating the final Crusader strongholds by 1291. At the same time, a far more devastating threat emerged from the east, the Mongols. In 1258, Mongol armies led by Hulagu Khan sacked Baghdad, destroying the city and bringing the Abbasid Caliphate to a catastrophic end. The destruction of Baghdad, the intellectual and cultural heart of the Islamic world, marked a turning point. The Mongols went on to ravage much of Persia and Mesopotamia, but their advance into the Levant was halted in 1260 at the Battle of Ain Jalut by the Mamluks, who once again proved themselves vital protectors of the region. In the aftermath of Mongol devastation, the Middle East remained politically fragmented. The Mamluk Sultanate ruled Egypt and Syria, while in Persia, the Mongols established the Ilkhanate, one of several successor states to the Mongol Empire. In Anatolia, the once powerful Seljuk Empire had collapsed, giving way to a patchwork of smaller Turkic principalities known as beyliks. Among these, one would eventually rise to prominence and establish a new imperial order across the region, the Ottoman Empire, founded by the Turkic chieftain Osman around the year 1300. The Ottomans began as a minor frontier state, but expanded steadily throughout the 14th and 15th centuries. In 1453, under Sultan Mehmed II, the Ottomans captured Constantinople, capital of the long-declining Byzantine Empire, renaming it Istanbul. This conquest was not only a symbolic end to the Christian Roman Empire in the East, but it also established the Ottomans as the premier power in the Islamic world. Over the next decades, they absorbed other Turkish and Islamic states, and in 1516 to 1517, Sultan Selim I defeated the Mamluks, bringing Egypt, Syria, and the holy cities of Mecca and Medina under Ottoman control.
By the mid-16th century, under the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent, the Ottoman Empire had reached its zenith. It controlled all of Anatolia, most of the Arab world, including Iraq, the Levant, the Arabian Peninsula, and North Africa, as well as much of southeastern Europe. The Ottomans created a vast, multi-ethnic and multi-religious empire that reintroduced a measure of imperial unity to the Middle East not seen since the Abbasid era. Crucially, this period also entrenched new geopolitical and sectarian divides. In the early 16th century, the Safavid dynasty arose in Persia, establishing Shia Islam as the state religion and forming an ideologically opposed polity to the Sunni Ottoman Empire. This Ottoman-Safavid rivalry would shape regional politics and sectarian identities well into the Modern era forming the roots of many enduring divisions between Sunni and Shia communities across the Middle East. During the 16th and 17th centuries, the Ottoman Empire stood among the most powerful states in the world. It controlled key trade routes between East and West, including the Silk Road and the Red Sea. Maritime routes and major cities such as Istanbul, Cairo, Damascus, and Baghdad thrived as centers of commerce, learning, and culture. The Ottoman administration used the millet system, which allowed a degree of religious autonomy for various communities, Muslims, Christians, Jews, and others, while the Sultan also held the title of Caliph, claiming spiritual leadership of the Sunni Muslim world. However, by the late 17th and into the 18th century, the empire began to experience a relative decline. Internally, it struggled with corruption, economic stagnation, and bureaucratic inefficiencies. Externally, European powers, particularly Austria, Russia, and later Britain and France, began to erode Ottoman territory and influence. The empire, increasingly seen as backward compared to rapidly modernizing European states, earned the moniker of the sick man of Europe. In response, a series of reform efforts known as the Tanzimat were launched in the 19th century. These reforms aimed to modernize the Ottoman army, civil administration, and society along European lines. While some successes were achieved, such as legal reforms that improved infrastructure, the reforms were uneven and failed to reverse the empire's strategic decline. Meanwhile, European imperial ambitions in the Middle East intensified. Britain established control in the Persian Gulf and gained significant influence in Egypt, especially after the construction of the Suez Canal in 1869, which made Egypt a crucial node in global trade. In the eastern Middle East, Persia, modern-day Iran, remained formally independent but came under increasing pressure from both Russia and Britain. The discovery of oil in the country in 1908 marked a turning point, inaugurating the petroleum age and drawing further Western interest.